Hi, I'm Nate Zanders of the Reforming Men podcast. Reforming Men is dedicated to cultivating a renewed vision of biblical masculinity rooted in Scripture and the Westminster Standards. We desire to see men loving their wives, nurturing their children, and leading in the church. Our mission is to encourage men to embrace their God-given roles as husbands, fathers, and leaders by calling them to Christ-like masculinity. So with that in mind, without further ado, welcome to episode 2 of season 2 of the Reforming Men podcast. Well, welcome back to the Reforming Men podcast. I'm your host, Nate Zanders, and today I'm joined by teaching elder James Baird. He's a pastor of Christian education at Covenant Church of Naples in Florida, my home state. He is a graduate of Covenant College, which is in my presbytery, Westminster Theological Seminary up in Philadelphia, and he has a THM from Union School of Theology. And he previously served at Westminster and Ligonier Ministries, and he and his wife, Georgia, live in Naples, Florida, with their 3 sons. Now, James, real quick question. How old are your 3 boys?
6, 3, and 1.5. So the
Awesome.
oldest just started jiu-jitsu this week.
Nice.
So it's been a big week.
Yeah, my oldest son is 6, and then 4-year-old boy, 2-year-old boy, and we just added a newborn little girl. She's about a month old. So 3 boys, man, it's awesome. It's the good life.
So that's a good life. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, is he wearing the gi? Is he in like the full old school?
He's rolling with his gi, man.
Awesome. That's cool. Keeping the traditional aspect of the art alive. I appreciate that a lot. Well, brother, you've written a book that I guess the hard copy is now available. It's now available in print. I read it 3 months ago via PDF. You were gracious to send me a sneak peek of it, and I actually woke up at 3 a.m. after you had sent it to me, and I said, I can't sleep, and I'm not going back to sleep, so I might as well get jacked up for the day and read some political theology. So
Nice.
I really enjoyed it. Couldn't put it down / couldn't close my computer screen as I was reading it, and I look forward to getting a hold of a physical copy of it. But why don't you just give us the elevator pitch for your book and what it's about?
I think like most of us, I figured out maybe 2 years ago that I needed a better political theology than I had, and that I needed to go back to the sources because most of the positions that were on offer at the time, I just didn't find very satisfactory. So I went back to Calvin, Turretin, Owen, the early American Presbyterians, 19th century Presbyterians, and I started reading the sections of their systematic theologies that we typically skip, the section on the civil magistrate. And what I realized is the options that they presented us were way better than the more modern and contemporary ones. But the issue is it's very easy to misunderstand it. In fact, you could argue that most of the contemporary options are based on misunderstandings of the traditional one. And it's not like I figured it out or anything. There'd been a lot of academic work that had been published as well to clarify what the Reformers, post-Reformation guys were saying. And I wanted to get that into the hands of other teaching elders in the PCA, like me, to get it to some sessions, some ruling elders, and then hopefully to some congregation members who are wrestling with these tough questions as well, and make all that academic work, all those really old, big, thick tomes, distilled down and applied in our context that would be accessible to people. So that's what I did. It's called King of Kings. I didn't mean to pick a green shirt with my green cover, but there you go. And it's 120 pages, and it is a brief primer on some of the most foundational elements of Reformed political theology.
That's awesome. Yeah, one of the things I really appreciated about your book, well, I guess it's not appreciation of one thing. It's more like a 5-fold thing or 4. I don't know how many this actually is, but it was logical. The position you're staking out is logical. It's biblical. It's confessional. It's historical, and it's also practical. And I really can't name another time in which I've read a Reformed political theology, a primer or a tome, whatever the case might be, that I felt like checked all 5 of those boxes.
That means a lot. Yeah, I tried to make it a one-stop shop as best I could.
Yeah. So give us the basic in the book. You present us with a pretty basic syllogism. So explain what a syllogism is, because most of our audience might be like me, a bunch of knuckle-dragging ex-jocks, and if you use words that are longer than 2 syllables, we're confused about what that means. Yep. And so explain to us what a syllogism is, and then present us with the one that you've used in the book to kind of logically defend your premise.
I'd be happy to. So a syllogism is a classic argument, a form of an argument, goes all the way back to the Greeks. The classic one is all men are mortal. Socrates is a man. Socrates is mortal. The thing about a syllogism, if it's put together in a valid form, then if you don't believe the conclusion, you need to disprove one of the premises. So if you don't think that Socrates is mortal, then you need to show that all men aren't mortal or Socrates isn't a man. That's the only way to prove or to disprove that Socrates is mortal. So in this case, I put together a very simple syllogism. It is not unique to me. I mean, this syllogism has been in the West for thousands of years. All I'm doing is kind of resurfacing a diamond that's been laying in the Western tradition for a long time. But the way I formulate it is the government must promote the public good. True religion is part of the public good. Therefore, the government must promote true religion. And of course, what is the true religion? Christianity is the true religion. So the conclusion is the government must promote Christianity as the true religion. And that's the whole thesis of the book. I look at that from many different angles, but that's the main idea, is that the government must promote the Christian faith.
Yeah. Yeah, and so basically A plus B equals C.
Yep.
And so if you don't like C, you have to go back and show whether or not A or B is false.
It's true. Well, yeah, it's false. That's right. You have to prove. So in this case, it would be, is the government not supposed to promote the public good? Thumbs up. So that's the first premise. Is the government not supposed to promote the public good? Well, the confession says that God instituted the government for the public good. So if you're a confessional Presbyterian, you can't deny premise 1. Premise 2, is Christianity not part of the public good? Is it somehow not good for, let's say, a society of people to follow Jesus, obey his laws, and trust in him? Well, that's obviously the case, not just biblically. Historically, we see many of the amazing things that are a part of Western society go back to its Christian roots. Even scientifically, I have a footnote where I look at dozens of different studies that have been done over 1.5 million different people. And what you find is that from education to healthcare to the economy to less corruption, less crime, just about any major public health or public well-being metric that you'd want to measure, they're all better when the society is a society of Christians.
So what you're saying is that the Christian faith doesn't just, the gospel doesn't just help save our souls, but it kind of transforms us into people who make an impact on the world around us, and it's actually a positive one. Like Christianity actually positively impacts more than just the spiritual realm.
That's exactly right. I mean, just think about how blessed it is to be in a Christian marriage. Not all Christian marriages go well, but if you're faithfully following God's design for marriage, it's a wonderful thing, right? It's way better than all the other alternatives. Imagine you have a Christian approach to work. You're doing it for the glory of God. You're going to enjoy your work more. You're going to have more stamina, more endurance. And it goes on and on and on and on and on. So yeah, it does make an impact on society. Now, the truth is that we can't turn Christianity into a tool for temporal well-being.
Right.
We're not utilitarians here. We're not Christian just because, like the liberals of the early 20th century say, you don't need the resurrection, don't need the Bible, just keep the Sermon on the Mount. That's not what we're saying. We're saying true religion, which is all about our relationship, our union with our heavenly Christ, provides us incredible spiritual eternal benefits, and as a consequence, it also blesses us temporally. So the temporal is always an outflowing of what's most important, the spiritual, but it's still a real consequence of the Christian faith.
Yeah, so it seems like one of the things you're saying earlier in the Western world and what's known as kind of the Western canon, Western tradition, which even predates the arrival of Christ, back into the Greco-Roman world, you seem to be implying that up until 15 minutes ago, if I can use that expression, all cultures have understood that the magistrate has a job to promote what they believe is to be the true religion.
That's right.
Yeah. Give us some examples of that throughout history, whether it's from Christendom or not.
Well, you can see it in the Near Eastern cultures. Even the Canaanites had their own religion, which was promoted by their magistrates, right? It's most clear in the Romans. Maybe not most clear, it's clear everywhere, but the Romans give us some good examples where you see them constantly emphasizing the importance of the civil magistrate to, in fact, this is one of the reasons why Christians get persecuted in the early church, right? Christians are called atheists
Right.
because they don't believe in the Roman gods. And that came with civil penalties for the Romans because it was considered not only a religious problem, but a civil problem as well. So they saw religion as key to what the job of the ruler, the civil ruler, was. You'll hear people talk about the law of nations. These are principles of law that you see across time and across cultures. And it's a good indication of what we might call natural law, the way God designed people and governments to be run. And this is as firm a piece of the law of nations as anything else, that it's the job of the government to promote true religion. Now, we should debate what is the best way for them to do that. We're not saying they all did it right? And we're certainly not saying that they all had the true religion, but the basic principle that they do have a duty to promote true religion is a fixture of all cultures across time.
Yeah. So one of the things that we do on this podcast is we try to be edifying and encouraging to men, particularly in the PCA, but hopefully we're reaching beyond the PCA and into other parts of NAPARC as well. We're trying to encourage guys to think about piety or godliness or faithfulness to our Lord Jesus in the home as fathers and husbands, in the church as churchmen or as elders and deacons, or whatever office that you might hold. But one of the things I think that we haven't had the opportunity to do too much of to this point is to exhort and encourage men to think about their role in the city gates. That's the way the Old Testament describes it. But that's the kind of the Old Covenant way of saying, in the civil realm. So how would you encourage us as Christian men, based on the book you've written and the perspective you're coming from, how would you encourage and exhort us to think about our role as men in society in this way?
I think one thing that you need to do is read. And some of the best people that you can read would be the founders of America. They are constantly talking about the importance of having a public spirit. A public spirit. And what a public spirit means is that you realize you're not living life for yourself. You're living life first and foremost for the glory of God. But secondarily, you exist for the sake of your neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Every decision you make every day impacts the people of your city. It impacts your community. And your job in life is to give up yourself for the sake of the other. First, your family, right? Yep. Then your neighbors, right? Then your city. There's an order to how you do it. But it is the most, it gets very twisted, I think, in the 20th century, where we start to tell the story of the founding as if it was all about individual rights. Right? My right to live my life the way I want to. That's not how the founders of America thought about the role of liberty at all, right?
Liberty was the freedom to do what you ought to do, what you must do.
That's right. Liberty was the freedom to do what was best for your community. That's how they defined it. It's freedom to do what's best for your community. So I would say you got to get your head straight. That's the first step, right? You can't just do a little community service here, a little community service there. You exist for the glory of God and the good of your neighbor.
There was a famous economist who, I'm not an economist, so I can't really explain all the ins and outs of that, but John Maynard Keynes, and pretty much everybody is, I think it was Richard Nixon that said, we're all Keynesian now, back in his day. And that was a sad day that, for a Republican to realize that even the conservatives have abandoned, the Austrian school and the Chicago school, free market principles. But it was so interesting when someone explained to me, the reason that Keynes was so short-sighted as he's building a very bad economic model is because on one hand, he's not a Christian as we understand Christians to be. And also he was in the 1910s, 1920s, he was basically a closeted homosexual with zero potential. Because back then you couldn't get married and adopt a bunch of children and kind of like play house as a gay man. So there's nobody. He has, as he's thinking
Mm-hmm.
about economics, there's nobody in the future that he's responsible for.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, when you're a Christian and you're living for God's glory and you're
Mm-hmm.
fulfilling the cultural mandate to exercise dominion, be fruitful, and multiply, it shapes the way you think about so many different things in the civil realm. And so I appreciate your exhortation to read and to also consider our role beyond just our individual our individual rights. What are some other things that probably the average Christian man gets wrong about where God has placed us as American men in his providence?
Well, I was just looking it up. I'm trying to remember which. Okay, it was. I think there are other roles that were like this in Rome, but it was at least definitely true of being the censor in Rome, and this is a really important position that a man would want to hold in Rome is to do the census. We today just think of a census as counting people, right? It was way more than that for the Romans. It was where your status in society was defined.
Wow.
So the Roman ruler, the censor, would go around. He would look at how you lived your public life, how you carried yourself, what you had accomplished, what you'd not accomplished, and then put you into the right position in the hierarchy of society. How pious are you, right? So when Caesar Augustus calls a census, right, and Joseph has to go home, it's not just so he can be counted, right? It's where you get your social status. But to
Wow.
hold that position in Rome, to hold that position, you needed to have at least 3 kids.
Interesting.
You couldn't be the censor unless you had 3 kids because you are doing a hugely formative activity for the polity of Rome and setting it up for the future when you say this guy is low class, he needs to be high class. This guy's high class, he needs to get knocked down a few pegs. Right? You are making a decision that will impact the future of Rome. And so they wanted to make sure that you cared about how things went.
You had skin in the game.
It's skin in the game.
Wow.
Right. So I'd say get your head right is the first one, and then the second one is get married to a good Christian lady and make some babies.
Yeah. And baptize those babies.
And baptize those babies.
That's right. We're unapologetically Presbyterian here.
Unapologetically Presbyterian.
Yeah. This is kind of way off topic, but that's something that just has always killed me being in the PCA is there seems to be guys that they're Presbyterian, but they're nervous about it. They always feel like they have to apologize because we don't dunk people. And I'm just like, hey man, just be Presbyterian and let the chips fall as they may. We're never gonna be cool enough for the non-denoms. Okay,
That's right.
there's nothing you can do or apologize for that's gonna make you hip. All right, so just be you. But
so our church here, it's pretty big. It's about 1,500 members. And so we have big new membership classes. I think right now I'm teaching one that's like 50 people. And since we're a big church, don't we attract more than your typical Presbyterians.
sure,
All sorts of different denominational backgrounds, former Catholics, former Methodists, right, non-denom Baptists. And so when we do the new members class, right, that's when I gotta say, all right, 5 points of Calvinism that you've heard on Sunday, but we actually believe it. That's just not just, Pastor
yeah,
Trent, right? And it's one of my favorite things to do because I get to share some of the coolest parts about being a Presbyterian and try and convince people that might be a little worried about it why it's really exciting. It's like my favorite thing to do at the church.
yeah. So one of the things I've really appreciated about following you on Twitter, I guess it's X now, I just refuse to call it that, is that you every time you tweet citing an American Presbyterian,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I get a little bit smarter. I feel I get the sense that the American revisions of the Westminster Standards have
Mm-hmm.
been vastly misunderstood.
Mm.
So give me whatever you got. Am I onto something there? Is it
I think they've been misunderstood. I do want to say this though first.
yeah,
So the discussion we're about to have has no bearing on the thesis of my book. Because when I'm citing the confession in my book, I'm citing the 1788 version, the version that all Presbyterian elders have to subscribe to. So this is not a theology of the English in the 1640s. This is a theology of the American Presbyterians that, founded the origins of our denomination and revised our confessional standards. So I do have some opinions about the 1788 revisions, but the first thing to note is that you can tell lots of different stories about why it was revised, but the words as they read right now teach that the government must promote true religion. You can see this in chapter 23, section 2. Well, you can see it in chapter 23, section 1, when they say that the civil magistrate, the government officials, exist for the public good. And for the early Americans and for the English and the Scottish, the public good was inherently religious, right?
Right.
It didn't just mean don't kill your neighbor or ensure the price of eggs isn't too high. It meant public piety, how you carry yourself, that you're not blaspheming the Lord, right? That you're going to church on Sunday. That was part of the public good. You see it in chapter 23, section 2, where it says it's the job of the magistrate to maintain piety among the people. In the larger catechism, you see it on the second commandment, where it charges civil magistrates with ensuring that the people honor the Sabbath. You see it in the larger catechism on the fifth commandment, where it says that the civil magistrate must ensure all the people of the realm are provided for everything they need, soul and body. They're not just supposed to make sure you got what you need for your body, your soul too. You see it in the Lord's Prayer at the end of the larger catechism, when it says, when we pray, thy kingdom come, we're praying that the civil magistrate would protect and promote true religion. So this is not just in the confession, it is part of our system of doctrine and at the essentials.
So I highly doubt that if I were to poll all the civil servants just in my own county here in East Tennessee, I highly doubt that they would understand that that's their role.
Yep.
So what is the role of Christian men in relationship to the civil servants regarding this duty that they have?
That's a great question. The first one is, well, we said it before, get your head straight. You need to live a public life. Get married to a good woman, make a lot of babies and baptize them. The next one is look at your character. Who are you? And I define good, manly character with three qualities: love, strength, and wisdom. So love means that you are constantly doing what is good for others. You're seeking the good of others around you. Strength includes mental, spiritual, physical, right? You can move weight, right? You're not easily deterred. You are as quick-witted as God's enabled you to be. You've been working at that. You have some mental strength as well. And you're spiritually strong. And then the third one is wisdom or prudence. This is one that I remember when I was a little kid, my dad would, when he'd pray with me, he would say, pray for wisdom, just like Solomon. And I think we need to be teaching our boys from a young age, pray for wisdom. We know this is a gift God loves to give. And if there's anything it takes guys a little longer to develop than our counterparts, it's wisdom, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's going to take time, but you need to be praying for it too. And it's basically the ability to know what the right thing to do is when there are lots of potentially okay options. That's wisdom, right?
Yeah.
You got a number of different ways you could go. There's no moral principle that tells you have to do one or the other. All of them are maybe permissible, but some are better than others. And you have the ability to know when to turn right or turn left when you're not sure. So work on your character, those three things. And that will help build a reputation. If you're living a public life with love, strength, and wisdom, you're going to build a reputation in your community, and that'll create opportunities for you.
That's a good word, James. I think one of the big temptations for us as men is even, how do I say this? It's to do the most comfortable, good thing we can do instead of to do the most right thing that would be more uncomfortable, more inconvenient. It's kind of that sin of Adam, the passivity, to where even when we're not overtly rebelling against an explicit command of God, we're still not being as righteously aggressive in holiness as we could be. And that's a challenge that I have tried to examine my own character about is to not do the bare minimum of the good thing. This
Hmm.
is especially challenging in parenting three small boys, as you could probably relate to. Um, and because I can't expect them to do that if I'm not willing to do that and model that for them.
Hmm.
But yeah, so often it's I see that in them. It's um, there can be on their tiny little hearts have deduced that this is the wrong thing to do, so I'm not going to do that. But
Hmm.
I'm maybe not do the maximally faithful
Yeah.
or obedient thing.
Yep.
Yeah, it starts young. So if you're a
That's
father,
right.
we have to. It's easier to grow this in our sons at a young age than it is when they're 20 to then try to, you know, it's never too late. Don't get me wrong, but it's easier to get these reps in now and prepare them for adulthood. So one of the chapters, it's the last chapter in your book. It's not a super long book. I mean, it's less than 100 pages. The last chapter is entitled "The Way of Exile." So I see this on Twitter. I've heard this in conversations,
Hmm.
and I don't want to accuse anybody of intellectual laziness, but sometimes it just feels like I can't answer any more of these questions. I can't wrestle and struggle through any more of these things. So I'm going to throw out this super righteous, pious, spiritual sounding answer as like the mic drop / conversation ender, and it's, well,
Hmm.
we're pilgrims, so I'm going to take Daniel and Nehemiah as my models. We're more like the Israelites in exile than we are Israelites in the promised land as Christians. So that's I'm going to take lessons from them.
Hmm.
How would you push back on that?
I have a few
Maybe
push.
you wouldn't. I don't know. I'm assuming, but
Well, there's two different questions here. So, one question is, what does the Bible mean when it says that we're in exile? Okay, I'll talk about that in a second. I'll address that first, actually. So, we need to remember that when we're called an exilic people, this is a supernatural reality, not a natural one.
mm,
So, what do I mean? When you become a citizen of heaven, it's not that you lose or forfeit your citizenship as an American.
right,
Right? So you are supernaturally a heavenly citizen. You're naturally an American citizen.
yeah,
In the same way that when I'm adopted in Christ as a son of God, I didn't break off my
right,
natural parents,
right,
right? Or the fact that I am the bride of Christ, that
yeah,
I've now divorced my natural wife, right? The
mm-hmm,
supernatural is above, beyond more than we could ever ask or think the natural, but it doesn't deny it or remove it. It improves it, right? By being a son of God, I'm a better son of Doug. By being the spouse
mm,
of Christ, I'm the better spouse of Georgia, right? We could, by being a citizen of heaven, I should be a better American citizen. I should
yeah,
care more about America, not less,
yeah,
right? And you'll hear people say it relativizes it. Well, yes and no. I mean, it definitely makes it to where America is not the most important thing in the world, but it should cause me to care more about the well-being of America than ever before, right?
yeah,
So it's important to remember what exile means, first of all. It means that if you're in Christ, you should be better at and care more about natural things, not for what they are in themselves, but because you serve a greater master and he has given you this time and place to be a steward. And
yeah,
so you care about it because you're not doing it for the country, you're not doing it for yourself, you're doing it for the Lord, right? So it relativizes it in that way. It's who you're doing it for, why you're doing it, what the
yeah,
principles are, right?
yeah. We're in
And
exile according to grace, not according to our nature.
exactly, that's exactly right. The second thing that I would say is sometimes people will say we're in exile not as a theological principle, but as a way of drawing an analogy to where our culture is and where the culture was with the Israelites. So there's two different ways they'll say it. One's the theological sense, we're citizens of heaven, but the other one is almost like cultural analysis. We need to be operating like people who are in exile. My response to that is, are we in exile in that sense? Is the exilic period the best analogy to where we are? Or is it more like the fall of the Southern Kingdom?
Mm,
Is that a better analogy of where we are culturally. And if we're in the midst of the southern kingdom falling, we best not be like one of the bad kings or lazy Israelites who didn't do anything, and as a result, sent their children into exile.
I'm in total agreement with you on that. I think Canada and the United States should look at, I would say, in some sense, by analogy, we're like the Southern Kingdom, and Europe
Mm-hmm.
is like the Northern Kingdom.
Yep.
And we would do really well to look at the decisions being made over in the Northern Kingdom and go, we shouldn't do that.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And yeah, I grieve for what's happening in Europe, and I certainly don't want that happening in Canada or in the United States or in anywhere else. But it is interesting, in Jeremiah 29, in my New American Standard here, the man-made heading for this section is "Message to the Exiles,"
Mm-hmm.
and the prophet says, starting in verse 4, "Thus says the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, to all the exiles
Mm-hmm.
whom I have sent into exile from Jerusalem to Babylon. Build houses and live in them, and plant gardens and eat their produce. Take wives and become the fathers of sons and daughters, and take wives for your sons, and give your daughters to husbands, that they may bear sons and daughters, and multiply there, and do not decrease."
Mm-hmm.
And then verse 7, "Seek the welfare of the city where I have sent you into exile,
Mm-hmm.
and pray to the Lord on its behalf, for
Mm-hmm.
in its welfare
Mm-hmm.
you will have welfare." I mean, to me, it should be just common sense and obvious that as the city around me goes, that I am impacted. My family
Mm-hmm.
is impacted by that.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I'm operating, if I can use this word, as a patriarch,
Yep.
my father-in-law who passed away this summer, he was so, I don't even know if he could spell the word patriarch,
Mm-hmm.
but he was thinking 3-4 generations down the road.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think most men are. I think they're just thinking until retirement, or thinking working for the weekend, whatever the phrase is. And we really are called to think not just our own behalf, but to think for the welfare of the city, think about our neighbors, like you were saying earlier, and to also just keep this normal human process of being fruitful and multiplying and filling the earth. I mean, I read these verses in Jeremiah, and I think this is like the instructions that God gives to Adam and Eve in the garden.
Mm-hmm.
And he's looking at these people that are in a real tough time, and he's saying, this process doesn't stop.
Mm-hmm.
And
right.
it concerns me when so many men in our Christian culture today,
Mm-hmm.
in the PCA especially,
Mm-hmm.
just act like, well, we're just exiles, so we're just going to like survive.
Mm-hmm.
And here we see instructions to exiles to thrive.
That's right. That's
So
right.
even if I agree with you, or not you, but these people out there, even if I agree with you that we're in exile,
Mm-hmm.
that's no excuse for the sentiment and the behavior that we often see from men, if that makes
That's
sense.
right. It's oftentimes used as an excuse for passivity, which is what you're saying. And it'll also oftentimes be used as a reason not to be politically engaged, right? When the instructions that are given to the Israelites is that when they go into exile, they should seek the welfare of the city. Well, do you know that there is not a single better definition of the word politics than seeking the welfare of the city? I mean, the word politics comes from the root polis, right? Which means city, right?
Yeah.
You seek the public good for your city. Now, were they in positions of political power? No, they weren't. Or maybe they were. I mean, look at Rashak, Meshach, and Abednego, right? Look at Daniel, right?
Yeah.
Look at Nehemiah, right? Look at
Yeah.
Esther. What we find out is that you have people of what? Love, strength, and wisdom, who have shown themselves to be people of action. And because they're people of action, carry themselves wisely with love and with strength, they're promoted to positions of political power. And what do we find? In every single case, what we see is that the political leader that they influenced, even though he was not a believer, one way or another ended up promoting true religion. Now, they might have done it imperfectly, fleetingly, but they did it. You see this with the king of Nineveh. He sends out a formal decree because of Jonah. This is before the exile, leading up to it. You see it with it's Artaxerxes, right? Or Xerxes with
One of the two.
Esther. right? With Esther, what does he do? He puts out the decree, right, that allows the Jews to protect themselves. You see it with Nebuchadnezzar. He puts out a formal decree. You see it with Darius. He puts out a formal decree. You see it with Cyrus the Great. He puts out a formal decree. It's almost as if when the Israelites go into exile, they're supposed to seek the welfare of the city, be people of character and action, and what that turns into is political leaders doing more what they ought to do all the time, which is what Psalm 2 says, serve the Lord with fear and kiss the Son. So even if we agree that we are in exile, we should be doing exactly what we saw the exilic Israelites do, which is be
Yeah.
politically engaged.
Yeah. We often forget that when Daniel rebelled against the decree of Darius, he did so as a civil servant.
As a civil servant.
He wasn't just some random Christian guy. He was highly ranked in the kingdom, had been very successful in that role, and he was practicing some civil rebellion in a very godly, nonviolent way. He was resisting,
Mm-hmm.
and
Same
he
thing with the three friends in the fiery
yeah
furnace, right? They
yeah
were being groomed to be officials.
yeah
Right? That's why in the world would Nebuchadnezzar care so much about these three guys? Well, they were being groomed to be officials, so he had to make an example out of them.
yeah. These guys were up and comers. They were the next thing, and they weren't some random peasants out in the field. They were already in the halls of power, and they were standing up to the man, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
As I think through these things, how would we? I've heard you mention on previous podcasts. This is you're kind of on the grand tour,
Yeah.
promoting your book, which is wonderful. Yeah, that's right. That's
Yeah.
right. And I've heard you mentioned explicitly how this perspective um, impacts teaching elders in particular and our role based on this magisterial two kingdoms view, and not the 17th century one, but the one that we have, the one that we've adopted as American Presbyterians.
Mm-hmm.
What is our role as teaching elders in the PCA in relationship to the civil magistrate and the
Mm-hmm.
public good?
Mm-hmm. The first thing that I'd say is what we've been talking about so far. We're still a republic, which means the people matter, which means you need to be investing in your young men. You need to teach them what it means to be men of action. And a lot of times I totally understand this impulse. You see the really excited young guy in your church and you're always trying to calm him down, you know?
Yeah.
And you should help him learn how to be wise and how to be good, right?
Yeah.
But you need to give him direction and not teach
Yeah.
him that his desire for action is bad. God made him that way, right? God made him to be a man of action. I wrote a thread on this earlier where I talked about how you end up with barbarians at the gates.
Mm-hmm.
And what we tend to think today is the way you end up with barbarians at the gates is you allow the prince to get unruly. That's not
Yeah.
how you get barbarians at the gates. You get barbarians at the gates because you were so worried your prince would be a barbarian that you turn him into a eunuch and there's no one left to meet the barbarians in the field.
That's right.
Right? So we need to be encouraging our young men to channel, to mature their desire for action, right? And to have families so that they're not a flash in the pan, that they get a long view of what they need to be doing.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. It's the best thing you can do for your society.
Yeah.
I believe wholeheartedly. Do you want to comment on that? I got a second one.
Yeah, no, I was reading a book 2 years ago. I didn't finish the whole thing, but the book begins with this analogy about society. And in this kind of fairy tale that's being told, the barbarian that is marching through the woods, robbing people on a quarterly basis, he's kept in check by the king of the kingdom who used to be a barbarian.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it was, that analogy is so important for us to understand as men.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to be able to civilize your enemies into meeting you at the table for a coffee and talking things out. You have to have strong men of strong minds, strong bodies, strong souls that are willing to that are willing to do hard work, that are willing to meet them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're so right. So often, I'm growing up in a Christian school in a conservative Southern Christian culture. It was you never heard people looking at the rough and tumble guy that's always maybe getting into a little bit of mischief. You
Mm-hmm.
never hear, hey, that guy will make a great church elder one day.
Mm-hmm.
It's always the quiet guy in the corner who
Mm-hmm.
has no potential whatsoever
Mm-hmm.
to intellectually or physically stand up to anybody. It's like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
what a nice young man.
Mm-hmm.
God might be calling him into the ministry.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
That's a great point.
yeah, and then it's the same thing. We get these guys that are, I hear other teaching elders all the time. They're like, oh man, there's these Gen Z guys. Oh man, they're just so intense, and gosh, oh man, and I'm going, please send them to my church. I feel way more comfortable trying to pull those guys aside and going, let's get that intensity and that vigor and that passion. Let's point it in the right direction.
Yep.
You're gonna be great. You're gonna be okay. You're gonna take your lumps,
Mm-hmm.
but humiliation is kind of the price for entry. So you're just gonna experience
That's how
it.
it works, dude. Right? You got to lose
Yeah,
some.
yeah.
Right?
You're gonna be embarrassed. You're gonna stick your foot in your mouth. You're gonna make mistakes. But I just feel like I can disciple those guys way easier than I can the guy who's like never takes any risks, has no passion, no zeal, is just a really sweet guy. And because I don't know how to. I feel like I know how to control fire more than I know how to like light it on a heart that is a damp, wet rag. You know what I mean?
I do see a lot of guys looking at Gen Z, and what they don't like that Gen Z exists. It's just how they act, right? And so they treat them like a principal, right? You're expelled,
Yeah.
right? Rather than a dad. Gen Z needs fathers, people who love them, who want to see them be even better. A dad was like, I want to see more aggression, son. Right?
Yeah.
I want you to see you get out there, right? And now I
Yep.
want you to take care of people, do it for the right reasons. We got some stuff we need to work on there. But, a dad who wants the best for you is what they need. And they will not ever look at a principal like their dad. And what we see oftentimes, I think, is a lot of finger wagging and then saying, why won't he listen to me?
Yep. Yep.
Just like the dad who can't control his teenage son, right? Because he punishes him all the time, right? He only sees him as a disciplinarian. He doesn't see him as a father.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's my heart for the young guys.
That was just point number one, though. Before I interjected, so what else, like what are some other?
Well, I want to follow up on this. I have the same issue with my three boys, because it's like each one we have is bigger and more intense than the last one. Yeah, and so it's like they're compounding, and they wrestle and they fight. I mean, all day long. They're poor mom, right?
Yeah. Oh man.
And my wife Georgia and I had to figure out how we want to parent this. And oftentimes what we'll do is we'll come up with little phrases that we want to reinforce. That'll be like a cornerstone that we can build on. And so what we decided to say when something happens is not don't fight, don't hit your brother. What we now say is use your strength for good, not evil.
Yeah. There you go.
Use your strength for good, not evil. I like the fight, right? I like that you're trying to defend yourself or whatever. But that was evil, right? The problem here isn't your strength. It isn't your intensity. God gave you that. The problem is, were you doing good or bad, right? And that's the spirit that I think will help the Gen Zers too.
Yeah.
Use your strength for good, not evil.
Yeah. All three of our boys are very strong-willed. And it seems like
I would never have thought that, Nate.
It's from our mother's side as well. Like we're both strong-willed people. So it's like, oh man, it's like it's funny. Like the other day, one of them was making like quirky, like cartoon noises, like just being a little boy. And my wife was annoyed, and I was like, sweetheart, he's literally our child. Like the two of us are just, like you used to do this all the time when we were dating. I don't know why you didn't keep your crazy tucked in, but he's just us, like we can't get mad at this is genetic. But it is. It's, each son is tracking larger than the previous one at the same age. And the youngest one is kind of gangly. He's kind of built like vanilla soft serve ice cream that was not compounded on a cone, but just kind of like stretched out. But he's feisty. He's strong willed. He's scrappy, and I don't want him. I don't want um, to nullify all of their aggression or
Hmm.
dampen that adventure and that that sense of toughness.
Hmm.
But I want to help try to like wield it and guide it in the right direction. Um, because I want them to be the kind of young men one day that have the capability to stand against what is evil and stand for what is right in the public
Hmm.
square.
That's right.
So it's a good word on parenting. I always need to keep that at the forefront of my mind as I'm trying to figure out how to guide them and father them in a really useful and productive way without pouring water on the fire.
Hmm. Yep, that's right. So that's the first thing I'd say is invest in the young men, the men of your community. If you want to change, like we should, your community to be more godly, invest in the young men. They're going to be the leaders. Number two, get active, right? You need to figure out a good opportunity to teach what God's word says in a way that applies to your community, right? In a public way. And that should just be normal, right? A normal part of your preaching. And the BCO
Yeah.
talks about this. You're supposed to help people know how they're going to fulfill their duties throughout the week. That's one of the things you should be doing in your sermon, right? Very simple. And then the third one would be, depending on your church, the size of it, and etc. You should try and find opportunities to preach the duties of the civil magistrate to the civil magistrates, right? Your duties are to the church, right? Not just your local church, right? But
Yeah.
also believers in your communities too. And you are the man that God put into one of the men that God put into the community to teach the civil magistrates their duties. So you could have people who serve in your congregation, they're in your congregation, they serve in a civil role. But one thing that a number of our pastors here do, and I've been doing it as well over the past 8 months or so, is I go to our county commissioners, and they invite me to come and do the invocation before they meet. And when I pray, I'm preaching the gospel. I'm preaching their duties, right? That they're
Yeah.
there to maintain piety, justice, and peace, right? They should
Hmm.
be promoting true religion. I've said this on a few podcasts, but um, God answered many people's prayers because 2 meetings ago they decided to put the Ten Commandments in county buildings.
Let's go.
It's
Let's
great. It's
go.
great
That's
news, right?
exciting.
It's awesome. So that would be the third thing that I would say. And then the fourth one is it's very self-serving. But I wrote this book so that you could buy a lot of them and hand them out to a lot of people.
Yeah.
There's so many misunderstandings, historical misunderstandings, theological misunderstandings about the role of government that I
Yeah.
really hope my book will clarify. That you need to get your
Hmm.
community thinking in the right way. That
Yeah.
when your county commissioners do put up the Ten Commandments, you don't think, "Oh, that breaks separation of church and state."
Yeah.
Right? No, it doesn't. This is
I've got a
very.
handful of the book, The Doctrine of the Lesser Magistrate, literally right behind me. I bought it,
Oh,
a bunch
cool.
of them in bulk. And I feel
Wow.
like your book and that book are two like
Yeah.
very easily accessible books, total less than 220 pages between the two of them. And I feel like I should mail a copy to every magistrate every civil servant that I've
Yep.
elected.
Yep.
And then
That's what I'm gonna
also,
do around here.
yeah, and then
It
also
looks
just
weird when I'm the author, but I'm still doing
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. But if I'm doing it, it feels less self-serving, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I also want to get it into the hands of the senior pastor at some of these really big Baptist
Yep.
churches
Yep.
around here because they're going to have just a lot more local cultural and civil influence than the Presbyterian Church of 125 people in the county.
And that's one reason why I published it with a Baptist publisher. There's a few
Yeah,
reasons, but one of them was, I mean, let's be honest, SBC is huge,
yeah,
right? There's a lot of influence there, and this isn't anti-Baptistic,
yeah,
It's also classic magisterial Baptist political theology too.
yeah, yeah. Someone joked online. They were some Baptist was talking about this kind of thing, and they're like, "Hey, we don't want to go back to that." to basically having to get permission from Presbyterians to get to like dunk people. And a
Uh-huh.
Baptist responded, "My brother, it would be the Presbyterians asking us for permission to
It's true.
to sprinkle their children." And it's like, hey, that guy gets it.
That guy gets it.
There's it's just
Funny.
hilarious to me that in the Protestant world in America that Baptists would ever be concerned about becoming the minority. It's like you
Mhm.
guys are everywhere in
You
30,
guys,
like Baskin Robbins. There's 31
that's
different
right.
Baptist flavors.
That's right.
Anyway, so I mean, I think I literally pass 3 Baptist churches on my 8-minute
I
drive to
believe it.
work every day. It's not, I mean, and if I took a different route that was 9 minutes long, I think it'd be 5.
Yep. Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
but you've got a who's list of people endorsing your book. Rob Pazienza, hope to eventually have him on the
I think
show.
a great guest.
Joe Rigney, former
Hmm.
Baptist. We've got Tom Askell, president of Founders Ministry. Ben Dunson, professor at Greenville. Miles Smith, professor at Hillsdale College. James Anderson, professor at RTS. A lot of different guys from various seminaries and theological perspectives have endorsed your book, and I'm excited to get my hands on a physical copy of it. And where can people find this book?
So right now you can get the physical copy from founders.org. Soon the physical copy will be on Amazon, but the Kindle is on
Great.
Amazon right
Okay.
now.
And if somebody like me wanted to buy it in bulk,
Hmm.
get a bulk discount, and try to give it out like candy at Halloween, who do we talk to about that?
Talk to Founders about that.
Okay.
Then you can also get an extra 10% discount for with the discount code KINGS.
Okay.
And if you're a church, if you're a pastor, they get a 50% discount. So you can buy them
Okay.
for 50% off, buy them in bulk, and they'll ship
Great.
them right to your church.
Awesome. That's great, man. Do you have anything else you want to touch on?
No, this was a blast. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. I look forward to seeing you again. I got the pleasure of meeting you briefly at General Assembly, and I look forward to getting to cross paths with you in the future. I know you're a busy guy between your 3 kids, and then you're also your role as the pastor of Christian education. But so I appreciate your time with us, and I know you're making your rounds on the different podcasts, and so it's definitely an even more busy season for you. Thanks for your time, brother. I'll be praying that this book is very successful and it gets into lots of people's hands, and I'll be doing my part to make sure that men in my congregation and their families have a copy, as well as hopefully some local Baptist ministers and some civil servants. Yeah, we'll see what we can accomplish just as grassroots Presbyterians through grassroots passing out this book. So
Well, I appreciate
hope you're
that.
blessed.
Thank you, brother.
Have a good one.
You too.